Hey guys, Richard Blaine here. Thanks for stopping by my Easy Cooking channel and Easy Cooking blog tonight. You know, last week I started a couple of modules on sharpening your knives, and I explained a little bit about what a dull knife is. And I thought this week I would do a tutorial and show you how to sharpen knives the Japanese way. And then I thought, maybe not. Maybe I ought to do something else. And I thought to myself, as I said in the last video, Japanese Waterstones are the rage today. People are using them to sharpen Japanese knives, and people are using them to sharpen Western European knives, although maybe not necessary all the time for the Western European knives. But something that not a lot of people talk about when it comes to the Japanese Waterstones, and I sell them by the truckload, is how to maintain your Japanese Waterstone. People learn how to maintain their knives by sharpening, but a very little known subject, which is how to maintain your Japanese Waterstones, most people don't even talk about. And then people come to me and go, these stones aren't working right anymore, and that's because nobody ever showed these guys how to maintain the stones, how to keep them flat. And that's what I'm going to do here today. Today's lesson is going to be how to maintain your Japanese Waterstones, how to maintain the flatness of the surface and the integrity to get you the sharpest knives possible. As usual with YouTube, 15 minutes, let's get going. I'll see you on the other side. Okay guys, so let's talk about maintaining our Japanese Waterstones. This here is a 6,000 grit Japanese Waterstone. It's a finishing stone, a polishing stone. And if you notice, there's a lot of black lines in it. It's been soaking for about 30 minutes in water to get ready for this chore. But if you notice, there's a lot of black lines in it. Now, that black stuff is metal filings from the knives that people have been finishing on this stone. Now what happens, whether you use water or not, is the metal builds up inside the porous nature of the stone, okay, and becomes basically its very own surface called glazing, okay? And glazing is just so much metal, okay? Now what happens when so much of that metal builds up, your knife will not make proper contact with the stone anymore, and therefore your sharpening will be inconsistent. So the process to fix this is called lapping, because you got to remember, this kind of stone will gully, okay, will dish this way and can dish this way. It could warp this way or this way because it's a ceramic. It's either clay based or resin based. So the object with Japanese Waterstones is to keep them flat, and the way we keep them flat is by a process called lapping. And the way we lap, well, when I started out, I started lapping using wet dry sandpaper at about 200 grit on another piece of 2x4, but I found that wasn't quite right. So then I discovered diamond plates. Okay, this is a heavy steel plate impregnated with diamonds at about 600 grit, and this is what I use to keep this stone flat. And it's a very simple process, lapping. You set the plate on top of the stone and you start to scrub. Very simple process. Up and down, and side by side. Okay, and the glazing will begin to come off the stone. Okay, side by side, up, back, and X's. Okay, okay. So here we go. Straight up and back. Okay, nice X. Nice X. Now, even though you might see the black marks go away, that doesn't necessarily mean that your stone is perfectly flat. What I'm doing here is building a slurry. Okay? Now, pull the stone off, and then occasionally turn the stone. Okay? Start the process all over again. Straight up and down. And X. Okay. So here we go. We're still working the stone. Okay. And it can take some time. It can take some time. Okay. I've been working about 5 minutes, 6 minutes with this off camera. And I think it's just about right. Okay. Yeah. That's just about right. All the glazing is gone, okay? Now we're going to allow this stone to dry because there's something to look for in Japanese stones as they dry. And it's a telltale sign as to whether the stone is flat or not. So hang on tight and we're going to see. Now even though the diamond is harder than the ceramic, it can still take some time to flatten the ceramic down. You want to cover all the angles, as I stated before. Straight up and down. Then you want to do some X's. And it gets kind of sludgy, so you dip the diamond in some water. Okay. You want to cut some X's. Okay, into the surface. You want to cut a few X's, a couple of straights. Then you want to dip the stone again because it gets clogged with the ceramic. Off to the side, off to the side, off to the side, off to the side, then straight back. Okay, X. Dip the stone. I'm using a 2x4 wrapped in a shop towel. Okay, and even though it's a wet surface, it still moves around a little bit. You would think it sticks to granite, but not all the time. Okay, cut some more X's, some more straight backs. Okay, turn the stone around because you want to make sure that you're covering all the surface. Okay, you want to make sure that you're evenly distributing the pressure on the stone too. I basically use the weight of this diamond. This plate is very heavy. It's a 600 grit. Most of my friends use a 120. The 120 cuts the ceramic very quickly and leaves some fairly deep gouges. I use the 600. It's a little bit slower, but the scratches that it leaves in the ceramic are a lot finer. The scratches won't affect your sharpening ability at all. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. There we go. After a while, you can feel it, that the stone is flat. Oh, you're trying to run away from me, huh? After a while, you can feel that the stone is getting flat. It's a sensitivity issue. It's a sensitivity issue. But if you're going to work with Japanese Waterstones, then you're going to have to understand it is the labor of love. And I think we're done here. And I'll be back in a few minutes to show you the next step of how to maintain a Japanese Waterstone. Okay, now the next thing to be aware of with Japanese Waterstones is you want them to be flat. Now you can use a level if you have a small level, okay? But usually the best way is just to use your eyes. And one of the best visual inspection methods, and I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, okay, is as the stone is drying, okay, you look for wet spots versus dry spots in the stone. Like you might see dry from here to here, and then this pond of fluid here, and then dry here. That tells you that this stone still needs work because the stone is gullied this way. Okay? It could also be possible that it's gullied this way if you're to have a dark spot of water here and dry here, or water here and dry the rest of the way, or water here and dry the rest of the way. So you have to learn to read the stone, kind of like reading tea leaves in a cup. For all intents and purposes, this stone is level. It's drying uniformly. There's no puddles. It's almost perfectly dry, which tells me it's basically flat. Now, there's no such thing as perfectly flat when it comes to working with these Waterstones, but as flat as you can get them is the best that you can do for your knives. Okay, so always a visual inspection. If you happen to see a puddle here, a dark spot, fluid here, you know that you're going to have to work the stone some more to bring down the two ends or possibly the two sides to make it level with center wherever the stone is drying. Also remember, when you're working with these stones, keep the stones away from any oils, petroleums. Make sure your hands aren't full of lotions and oils that can stain the stone and sink in, because this stuff is like a sponge. Like I said, I don't know if you can tell, but this stone is basically drying right in front of my eyes, and there are no dark puddles where water is gathering. So for all intents and purposes, this is a flat stone. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is how to radius the stone to make sure that this stone stays as flat as possible so that your knife can get the full benefit of the stone itself. So hang on tight. Okay, if you can see, that stone dried basically perfectly uniform. There's no puddles. There's some stroke lines from the lapping. But now the more important part I'm going to show you is how to radius this stone. Radiusing the stone is possibly the easiest thing to do to a Japanese water stone, except nobody talks about it. And what that basically means is these sharp edges on the stone, okay, have to come off. Now a lot of stone manufacturers today making consumer level stones will already have radiused these sharp edges off, okay, but a lot of them don't. When you buy the double-sided consumer stones, they're basically radiused for the most part, depending on the maker, but these single stones are not. Now the reason you radius the stone is even though I've leveled the stone, okay, these sharp edges could represent a rise in the stone without me even knowing it. Now what that rise means is when I take my knife to the stone and I find my angle, okay, and I start to polish, okay, what the rise of these angles can mean is that my blade is making contact here and here, but not making so much contact in the center of the stone. And the way you tell is when you ride the knife up and down the stone, if you start getting glazing or metal filings here, but nothing here, that tells you that your edges are rising above the surface of the stone, and you need to radius that off. And that's a fairly simple thing to fix, okay, and will make your stones work that much better. You'll take your diamond plate again, okay, you'll take your stone in your hand. Basically, you'll find the corner, okay, you'll find the edge, lay it flat right about there, and you'll rough it up with your plate, okay. You could do it freehand. You don't have to lay it down. Okay. That's all. One edge, radiused. One sharp edge, gone. A little water. Lay your stone on the angle. Few strokes back and forth. See? Okay. Smooth, angled. Okay. You even do it on the small sides. Okay. Just find an angle and start rubbing. Okay. See? And then you feel. There you go. A nice rounded edge. Flattened, actually. There you go. Doesn't take much. There you go. Nice radiused edge. Now, when you take your knife to the stone, okay, you won't have a rise line. You won't have a rise line causing improper contact. Basically all there is to it, guys.